Hey everyone, and welcome back to the corner. It's the Bard here, and I'm bringing you your Minion mancer video exactly as promised. However, what I'm going to do for you guys is I got so excited when I did Necromancy, Cursecaster versus Minion mancer. I thought I'm going to do an entire series on this. I'm going to do this as a 3.5 revive segment, and I want to bring back this classic D&D experience. So the first thing everyone thinks of when they think Necromancer is literally legions of undead rising from the grave and going out to eat the flesh of the living. Well, I totally agree with that, and I can understand why people would think such things. But that's not all Necromancy has to it. When I do my Cursecaster video as part of my Schools of Magic series, you're going to see exactly what I mean when I say Necromancy. But in the meantime, for those of you who just love having those skeletons wandering around behind you, following your every move, this is going to be the build for you. So to make this more than just those lists of feats and lists of class levels that you pick, which you find on every optimization thread or message board, we're going to get proper builds, not these just min-max board kind of things that everyone's so hyped about all the time. Now, it's all very well and good to say, oh, I'd like to have, like a gnome necromancer or something, but, even with a whole horde of undead following on behind you, it's very difficult to take a sinister gnome seriously. You're not going to be, like, crapping your pants when some little halfling or something comes up to you and it's like, I'm going to curse you now. It just doesn't have the impact. Okay, yeah, to be sure, any character can be played, but I want to help you guys pick appropriate characters. You want an intimidating presence when you start building the Necromancer. So you essentially don't want anyone who's going to clock in at under 4 feet tall. I know that sounds a little bit unfair to the other races like halfling, gnome, and to a certain extent dwarf, but the bigger, taller races, they just have more impact, and part of that necromantic approach is just being able to intimidate. What I think you might want to look at initially is human. Human's a very good choice, and it's a great race to pick because of the extra bonuses you get to feat and extra bonuses you get to skills. Humans also tend to run a very broad spectrum of personality types, so obviously the champion of good or the absolute abominable evil, so it's a really good pick. But that being said, however, elf has an interesting choice, because elves, with their incredible longevity, they have plenty of years in order to come up with ideas and thoughts and hypotheses on what it means to transcend between life and death. So it's only natural that over the years they may develop an unusual obsession with it. So that might also be a fairly good place to start. So we're going to use human as our baseline. We're going to go with a necromancer human. You're going to want a character who's probably, at the very least, in their 30s. You don't want to go too much younger than that. It's very, very rare. It's possible, I suppose. You could, in theory, you could have a history where a young neophyte wizard was brought up by another necromancer and thus following a line of tradition. You could just have a choice of aptitude. Something that I've always wanted to experiment with is just some random rolling. Just pick each and every school of magic, roll 1d20 or something for each, and the highest number is the one that you're most apt with, and the lowest two are like the ones you would discard. This is okay for short-term games, and it also kind of gives you like a reason to drop those rather than just choosing the ones that you think, oh, I don't like that particular school, or that one's not really to my style. I think it just adds a little bit of character. So that's one way that you could actually do the build, by you know, literally randomizing the school that you are, or randomizing the two that you will lose, which I think has a lot of opportunities there just for fun role playing. Sorry, guys, I got a little bit sidetracked there. Alright, so if you want to have a young necromancer, then a good way to do it would be the indoctrination. Like as I said, born into it. Perhaps if you wanted to, you could have the tragic backstory. That's always a great reason to take up necromancy. What you have to understand about necromancy is that necromancy is not as much about death as it is about life. So you could have this obsession with life and death and wanting to bring a loved one back. So, I mean, you can understand how some necromancers, even the most well-meaning of necromancers, go through these myriad of trials and tribulations as they progress through their character. So you could start out young, naive, full of good intentions, and then that can slowly build into this self-loathing, this hatred of life, or this just disregard for the laws of people. So experiment with that. As we gain maturity, we become more creatures of practicality. Therefore, a middle-aged or even an aged necromancer is going to see the practicality of necromancy as opposed to having the knee-jerk reaction of the common townspeople. Or what I mean by this is, if you were to have a hireling who you have to pay X amount of silver per day, that's fine for a while, but it soon starts to dig into your monetary funds. Think about this concept of having a worker who can work all day, all night, doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, doesn't rest, does everything you tell them to the letter, and never ever stops obeying your commands. All that for 50 gold pieces, and it works for you forever. Now, if you can imagine the aging wizard sat at his desk penning his scrolls as a skeletal minion brings him a new parchment to write on, another one brings him a new well of ink, there's one that goes off to collect some spell components. This is the kind of utility that I have in mind when I think of a necromancer. And rather than just resorting to the constant "I'm evil and I'm going to curse you" style, if you think of necromancy more in terms of practicality, then it becomes much more than what it initially seems, and it gives you plenty more to work with. If you start to think of necromancy as a school that affects life more than it affects death, then you get a whole host of other options, because that's what necromancy really is. It's a school that affects life. Yes, it will animate the bones of the dead, and it will give them the semblance of life, but that's all. Yes, you can speak with the dead, and they recall what they knew in life. You can reduce their strength. You can, poison their body. Are you seeing a theme here? It's more about life. Necromancy is a school about life. It's not about death. There is death in it, but it's usually that transition from life to death. Try to change your way of thinking when it comes to necromancy. You need to understand that it's a school of life. And when you start to understand that, you start to understand how much broader your character can be. And I talk with passion about it, I know. I would really recommend that you get this in your head, that it's a school of life and not a school of death. When that's in there, necromancy either becomes just another school with no strange connotations to it, or it just becomes a whole new experience. And I really think that you guys can get a lot out of that. So we're going to be using at least 3 particular supplements. We're going to be going with Complete Mage. We're going to be going with Libris Mortis, the Book of Undead. And this is another one now that you may not have heard of. It's pretty old and you might not be able to find it anywhere, but you can definitely get it on PDF. It's Encyclopedia Arcane Necromancy Beyond the Grave. And this is a great book. It's not very big, it's not particularly filled with stuff, but there is just lots of, really interesting ideas. And it's also like I said before, it's a bit more practical in some senses because it allows you to kind of get that minion mancer going from the get-go rather than having to wait till like level 7 or 8. You can actually start animating dead from level 1, which is brilliant. Okay. On top of that, there are some interesting, very specific skills in there, which you might enjoy. So I think it's definitely worth a look. So you're going to want to pick some skills for your character, and there's plenty to choose from. If you've decided to go with the Encyclopedia Arcane Necromancy Beyond the Grave, then I can highly recommend Necrology as one of your core skills. Now, as with any build, you're going to want the ones that are obviously most relevant to you. So, you're going to want Knowledge Arcana, and you're going to want Spellcraft. Now, these are two obvious skills. You really can't do without them. You're also going to want maybe concentration, but I think you can stand to lose points in concentration. You might want a couple, but you don't have to go completely mental with it. To be honest, you're not going to be taking that many hits and losing spells, because trying to ready an action to hit you whilst there's a wall of bone in front of you, not the easiest thing to do in the world. If, however, you want to look at some of the more thematic skills, which would be appropriate, this is kind of what I had in mind. So what kind of skills can you pick for your Necromancer, barring the most obvious ones? Well, if you're looking to actually animate dead using the main spell rather than the special ability that the Pale Master class gives you, then you're going to find that Appraise is a very good cross-class skill for you to take. Especially if you're dealing with some very stingy DMs. Because DMs don't tend to like people animating the dead too much. Unfortunately, what you get is this zombie do this style of play. And essentially you have something walk down the corridor in front of you and it trips the mines, it falls into the pits, it gets squashed by the crushing rocks, it gets its head sliced off by the swinging guillotine pendulum. So one way that they try and keep that down is to give you jewels that aren't really worth as much as you think they are. It's kind of cruel, but it does happen. So Appraise is definitely a good one. Especially for thematic reasons. Bluff can be a good choice if you have a charismatic wizard, because you're going to have to talk your way out of a lot of situations. If you're a bit meeker or you're a bit more reserved in your style of play. If you're the opposite and you're just a hardcore necromancer who just takes no nonsense from anyone, then clearly go with Intimidate. As far as some other cross-class skills go, why not consider Disguise? Because you're going to want to be able to hide some of those minions as you're wandering around town. Knowledge Religion is clearly one of the best ones you can take. This is actually a class skill for you, because all knowledges are class skills, and you're going to need at least a few points in Knowledge Religion in order to get into the Pale Master class anyway, and this is probably one of the better choices. You at least want a couple of levels of Pale Master. If you want to have a craft or a profession, then profession tailoring, because this is going to save you money on those full-length cloaks that I was talking about in the previous video. And on top of that, if you could, I suppose, go with 1 or 2 points in survival just to find those useful corpses and components. But apart from that, I think one of the best that you could hope for would be some kind of deceptive skill. Usually like disguise, forgery, or perhaps some gather information. Because what you have to also understand is there are going to be instances where you need to build your force of creatures. You're going to want to find where there's a good quest to slay a strong beast that's been terrorizing the town. And everyone will think that you're the hero for going out and saving them from this terror, when in actuality you just need a decent body which you can animate from the dead. Nothing too much to say on this one. You're going to prioritize your stat points in exactly the same way as every consistent wizard build. Intelligence is going to be your tip top one, because you're just going to want some extra spells, and you're going to want a survivability, so constitution and probably dexterity. If you want to be wise, then just for thematic reasons, by all means go with it. Charisma is probably bringing up the rear there. Strength is going to be your dump stat. So standard wizard build, really. So for a really feat intensive class like the Minion mancer, you're going to want to really put those feats exactly where you need them. And it's gonna start off pretty much with Corpse Crafter. There's really no other feat that you can take. Plus to strength and plus bonus hit points is just too good to pass up. If you're using Encyclopedia Arcane from Beyond the Grave, then you can really go with Augment Undead as well. It requires 4 points of necrology, but it's definitely worth it. I mean, being able to give whatever you animate maximum hit points as well as a bonus depending on your level, that can really help you. Also, though, you're going to have to buy up a couple of extra dump feats that you don't really want, but you have to have them in order to get into the classes. You need to have skill focus religion in order to get into Pale Master, and you don't actually want to go too far down the Pale Master route. You want pretty much just enough to get you animate dead without having a material component. You're also going to want skill focus necromancy just to get you into the real important class, which is Master Specialist. Now, I know that people are probably screaming at their TV sets now, if people are already au fait with this, and saying, why aren't you going all the way to the very end of Pale Master, because you can have a touch attack that allows you to have an infinite number of skeletons under your command. Well, yes, it does allow you to do that, but how practical is that really? Because let's be fair, it's not. Yeah, alright, you can have a bunch of things under your command, but you also have to think about the other players at your table. What I want to do with this particular series is to give you playable and enjoyable characters. I don't want, a character to be so overpowered that it just stinks like 2-week-old cheese. You're going to want at least a reasonable amount of minions, and you're going to want a good variety of minions, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail later. Chain Spell, I pretty much can't recommend better than Chain Spell. It's such a great feat. If you're going to go with minions that use weapons, then you want to consider Chain Spell with, say, Greater Magic Weapon. For the price of a level 6 slot, let's assume you're a 12th level caster, that's 12 of your minions, or 12 weapons in total. So say it's you and a party of like 4 adventurers, and you have a handful of minions, then everyone in that group can have a magic weapon. This is really good, because what you'll find is that skeletons and stuff have a very low base attack, and hitting is not something they're particularly proficient with. Being able to raise that ability to hit their target, really handy, especially if you're going for a horde of minions. As I've said, however, before, you want to concentrate on going for a variety. You want some small, some medium, some large. Chain Spell is great for this. because you're going to want to use Chain Spell along with Command Undead. Now, this is going to be your bread and butter spell, and we'll go into spells a bit later, but this is the spell that you absolutely need to have memorized. And if you have it memorized with Chain Spell, then obviously you can affect one target per caster level. This is really good because this allows you to say, oh look, there's a 12-headed Hydra skeleton over there, and I'm going to have, or let's see, 12 per 12 per whatever. So you could have 12 huge skeletons following you around, all under the command of your Command Undead, which lasts for 1 day per caster level. So you're looking at just under 2 weeks before you even have to consider recasting the spell to keep control over your biggest minions. Because Command Undead doesn't care about how many hit dice they have. So you use Animate Dead and use it to control your lowest level minions, and you use Command Undead to control your higher hit dice minions, because then you're not worrying about how many hit dice are under your control, nor are you worrying about how many targets you can affect. So basically you get the biggest bang for your buck by doing it that way. Animate Dead to control small minions, and Command Undead chained to command big minions. As I said before, this class is really feat intensive, and you really need to concentrate on exactly which feats you're going to go for. So, which ones do I pick? Well, you might want to consider Necromantic Presence. This isn't a terrible feat in and of itself, it's pretty good. You get a +4 bonus to the turn resistance of every undead that is within 60 feet of you. The 60 feet radius is quite a big radius. That's a lot of creatures you can fit in that. But the reason you want to take Necromantic Presence is because it naturally then leads into Necromantic Might, whereby your minions receive a +2 enhancement bonus to certain rolls. Now, if you're going to not go with Chain Spell, then this is a great second choice, because obviously you're going to want to improve their saves, you're going to want to improve their attacks. So this can be a real boost to your minions, and it will give a bonus to everyone rather than just the few that will be able to receive a bonus based on your character level. Having these two feats together, obviously they're going to work in the radius effect. Every creature you have is going to benefit from it. So this is the toss-up, really, isn't it? Do you choose to go cheaper and have Chain Spell, which then is kind of eating into your resources of spells a little bit by forcing you to use a spell on minions? Or do you go more feat intensive and go with Necromantic Might and Necromantic Presence to give bonuses which maybe aren't quite so high, but everyone's getting hold of them as well? So you really have a choice to make, and that particular choice is very apparent when you're working with big numbers. Like I said, if you're going for the Horde. If you're going for lots of single hit dice minions, Necromantic Might, Necromantic Presence makes them very survivable, as well as much better to hit, and everything's going to get the bonus. If you're going to go with mid-level creatures, I would say Chain Spell. So we're naturally getting into spells now. And to be honest, as a wizard, this is the meat of your class, so you really need to concentrate on the spells you're going to get. Now, if you're one of these players who likes to have the most humblest of beginnings, and you're going to start from, say, an apprentice wizard, then Animate Animal from Encyclopedia Arcane Necromancy is a great start. Literally, we're looking at a cantrip which you can then use to bring a small animal to life for 10 GP. Now, it's permanent, as with any undead. Doesn't affect how many you can control. You can only have one at a time anyway, but it kind of shows the progression that you're going to take. So it's really just a fun little spell just to really get you in the swing of things. So animate animal, a cantrip, and you've already got an undead minion. Moving on quickly to level 1, you're going to have to take animate skeleton. I mean, this is every necromancer's dream, or every starting player's dream, to be able to animate dead from the get-go. And this supplement has given you a first level raise undead spell, a single hit dice humanoid skeleton for 50 gold. Now, 50 gold might seem a bit more expensive, but you got to remember this was written back when it was 3rd edition, not the kind of 3.5 upgrade. But still, just to start animating dead early, I think it's a good choice. And then this naturally leads into your second level, animate zombie later. So animate skeleton allows you to start making undead straight away. And if you're taking corpse crafter, it's going to be a stronger undead than normal anyway. This is going to be a great little early game boost to your attacks. Monsters are going to have a bit of difficulty getting past its damage reduction because it's still a skeleton. It's a really, really good choice. If you've still got enchantment or illusion within your group of usable schools, then you want to consider sleep or card spray respectively, because neither one of these two spells affects your minions. So you can literally drop it on top of the group. It will bypass all of your skeletal companions and just go straight for the living creatures. This makes it a very, very strong choice. You can also go with spells like Silent Image, because your minions aren't going to be fooled by it for a second, and they just carry on about their business. Obscuring Mist is also really good, particularly if you're going to have minions surrounding you, using them as a shield. Obscuring Mist is great because then you have that mischance. So definitely worth considering. Wizard also gains access to summon undead from levels 1 to 5, and you'll find these 5 spells in the spell compendium if you're using it, or if you're aware of it. Again, this is a great extra resource to have just for bonus creatures under your command, because you want a lot of creatures. That's the whole point of running a minion mancer, is you want to have creatures that do your bidding. So this is a really good choice. You can even go totally crazy for maximum confusion. You can have your minions that you've animated, you could have minions that you summon, and then you could have illusionary minions for just total battlefield control, so that some monsters that you're fighting don't even know which creatures they should be attacking and which ones they can walk through. So it's a very, very crazy combination, but it can really add to your survivability. So we're getting into your second level spells, and the first one you're going to pick up is obviously going to be Command Undead. You've got no choice in this whatsoever. The Minion Master has to take it. As soon as you can raise, a skeleton, then you're going to want to use Command Undead. Bang. You've got control of that. Then you can raise another skeleton by virtue of the spell itself. So you're already starting to get that horde up. A close second, however, is definitely going to be Animate Zombie. You want that one. Again, no two ways about it. You really want to make it get as many creatures on the go as you can. So definitely take Animate Zombie as well from Encyclopedia Arcane. After that, there's a lot of good options. I mean, you could go with Scare. Scare's not a bad one. Again, it's a Necromancy spell. It doesn't affect your minions, so they're not going to have to worry about being hit by it. You could go with Darkness, because again, the mischance is great against your minions, if you want to keep them defended, but they're really there to soak damage, so I probably wouldn't go Darkness. I would probably go with, say, something like Summon Swarm if you wanted a decent attacking spell, because swarms they're going to ignore your minions anyway, so it doesn't really matter if they're in the middle of it. Your minions aren't going to be affected. So just go all out. Also, definitely grab Resist Energy. It's going to be one of the first spells that you want to consider to chain together using your chain spell feat. This is going to be great because most of the time you're going to be sitting back waiting for other people to do things. You're going to want to wait for someone to start casting. When you see that lightning bolt coming, that's when you cast your counter spell, and then boom, everyone is defended. If you don't have the correct spell to dispel theirs, or you don't have dispel magic, you can at least cast a resist energy to keep your minions safe. Now we're moving on to third level spell territory, and I really can't go with anything better than say haste. It's one of the best. Extra attack bonus, extra defense bonuses, extra hits per round. One target per level, doesn't even need chaining. It's already chained itself. That is just amazing. Grab it, get it, have it, use it. Cannot say better. Then now you've got a bit of a toss up now between greater magic weapon and displacement. Now this makes for some really good chaining later on. Greater magic weapon, obviously your fighters in the group are going to love you when they get to have a bit of chained enhanced damage and attack rolls, and then obviously what remains is going to be ploughed onto your weapon wielding minions. That being said, however, characters like rogues and other upfront fighters are also going to love that 50-50 mischance that displacement offers. So if you still have illusion available to you, it's a great defense, and it makes even your biggest, nastiest monsters have a 50-50 chance of not getting hit by a physical attack. It's just too good a spell to pass up. Definitely grab it. Definitely worth that 6th level slot to give as many creatures as you can, and as many players as you can, those awesome bonuses. So we're getting into 4th level spells, and I can see you, I can feel you through the TV here, and you're brimming with anticipation because you want me to say animate dead, and I'm gonna say no. In fact, if you've decided to burn a feat on skill, focus, knowledge, religion to get into Pale Master, you will never, ever, ever need animate dead, because you'll always be able to get it for free once per day. I would go with Fear. Fear is an amazing crowd control spell that does not affect any of your minions. It's just so good. Plus, you already have skill, focus, necromancy, because you needed that to get into the Master Specialist class. So what makes that such a great combination is you have an advanced chance to hit your targets without affecting any of your minions as well. Another one that I would really recommend is Hallucinatory Terrain. Now, you're probably thinking, why on earth would you want that? Well, you got to understand that having loads of huge, undead creatures running around is not going to be, a pleasant sight. The humanoid minions you can cover up with basic clothes, as we've discussed earlier. But the big creatures, like say if you had like a bugbear or an owlbear or, I don't know, bear, they're going to need a place where they're not going to get spotted by the public, and a hallucinatory terrain is a really, really good way of hiding your monsters when you're in town doing stuff. So really consider that spell. As you start to get more proficient with your casting, you're going to realize that more and more creatures are just they're just going to get found out more easily. So having things around where you can hide them effectively is great. Stone Skin. Now, Stone Skin is great if you're going to chain it, because the 500 gold piece casting it really hurts. But if you know that there's something big coming up, you want to defend yourself, you want to defend your party, and you want to defend your best undead attackers, then yeah, go for it by all means. Get as much bang for your buck as you can. Really don't waste it on single castings. If you can get it chained, go with it. Yes, it's a 7th level slot, but in my opinion, you cannot do a better defense. As far as 5th level spells go, and I don't really want to go too much above 5th or 6th level really, because I want you to have playable characters. I don't want you to... I don't want to go all the way to the very end, because that takes away some of your creativity. But on top of that, it also... I want to give you things that you're going to have a chance to use, rather than... I mean, because how many times have you had a game where you're just playing away, having a great time, and you never get to see those top end levels? So I'll try to just go up as high as, say, 5th or 6th level spells. So, the equivalent of maybe a 12th or 13th level character. So, if you want a good attack spell, you can't really go wrong with Cloud Kill. Won't affect your minions one bit. If you're using primarily skeletons and not zombies, then you can go with Cone of Cold. This is a really strong evocation, and it covers a huge area, and your minions aren't going to feel a thing. If you're feeling particularly cruel, Wall of Force is also a great evocation. You can chuck up Wall of Force and your opponents have nowhere to run as the entire horde just advances on them, so that's pretty scary stuff. So we're going to quickly go on to prestige classes, and I want to burn through this as fast as I can because this has gone on so long. But let's get on with it. So, what you're going to want to go for is Master Specialist. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why didn't you want to go all the way to the bottom of Pale Master? Well, I've discussed this already. But what makes Master Specialist so good? Well, I'll tell you what makes it good. As you progress through Master Specialist, you get a caster level increase to your chosen school of magic. A caster level increase works in a way to give you control over more minions. So you will get a +2 caster level increase. This is really strong, because it will give you an extra 8 hit dice worth of minions that you can control, because it's 4 hit dice per caster level. If you really want to stack levels like that, you could consider Arcane Thesis for an extra couple of caster levels as well, but it's probably not worth the feat investment. With having those extra caster levels and extra creatures is just one little bonus that you get from Master Specialist. When it really gets into the most useful things is your Minor School Esoterica, which is what will allow you to give your minions some turn resistance for a number of rounds equal to your level. This is really good. So whenever you're casting those spells, they're getting the bonuses. This is a great way to avoid having to invest in a feat like Necromantic Presence if you can't afford the feat tax. So being able to just go straight in and say, okay, I'll be able to give my minions at least some turn resistance just by spellcasting, by virtue of my class alone, really useful. Especially, like I said, if you're trying to keep the game in the low levels. The bonuses you get for your moderate aren't really necessary, but they're just great to have those immunities. And the top end major ones, they're only useful 3 times per day, but that's more than enough. It's plenty for what you want. Giving your minions fast healing of 10 for 5 rounds. That is huge. 50 points restored to every creature within the radius. It's unbelievable just how much damage you'll be able to soak with that, especially if you've got minions who have maximum hit points from feats like Augment Undead. Just brilliant. Master Specialist all the way, right to the very end. On top of that, like I said, you want just 2 levels only of Pale Master. Yes, Pale Master technically allows you to have more undead under your control, but think about the other players around the table. If you have some really big, huge, chunky monsters who are doing the attacking, then you only have to make a couple of attacks each round. This is easier for you, and it's more fun for them because they're not getting bored as you're making hundreds of attacks. Wow, this has really gone on for a hell of a long time, But then again, such is what is to be expected from this undertaking. If you've managed to make it here to the end, I'm very pleased with you. You must have the absolute patience of a saint, or the stamina of an Olympic athlete, in order to put up with listening to me for this long. So well done to you. If you have any suggestions or any requests, just shout them out, chuck them in the comments. Have fun out there when you're on your adventures. Make sure you consider the other people around the table as well, and play your character. Make it the best you can absolutely be. Keep your eyes peeled for more content, at least the video for each specialist wizard class. So keep your eyes out for those, and have an absolutely great time out there slaying dragons and gaining epic loot. And until next time, see you later.